Well, good morning, everybody. It's 11 a.m. here on the East Coast, and I want to thank you for joining us for this free webinar brought to you by Copri's Asset Management Task Committee. We've got Travis Black and Kirk Clausen from MARAD here today, and they're going to brief us on the Ports and Waterways programs and resources at MARAD. So, without any further ado, I'll just hand it over to Travis Black. And again, thanks for joining.
All right, thank you very much, Sean. We appreciate the invitation. We like to talk about our programs, and our success is when ports are able to get money and increase or improve the infrastructure. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully it'll work again. We'll go ahead and get started here. So I just wanted to give this as kind of an overview of the presentation today. We're going to talk a little bit about what the Office of Ports and Waterways Planning is, what the Maritime Administration does in this arena. I'm going to talk about the Marine Highway Program, which is one of the grant programs we run. We're going to talk about other grant opportunities, financing, loans, etc. We've got several resources that we have that assist ports. There's a port planning investment toolkit, and then there's additional tools that are available either through the department or associated websites. And then we've been working on a waterfront asset management tool. So I'll give a brief summary of that, and then we'll have open questions at the end. So what is the Maritime Administration? What do we do in our arena? We are to promote and foster U.S. merchant marine and the American maritime industry. We're basically trying to improve and strengthen the transportation system using maritime, and that includes landside infrastructure, shipbuilding, and labor, trying to improve the economic and national security needs of the nation. What do we specifically do here at the Office of Ports and Waterways? The primary goal of our office is to increase national cargo capacity, improve the reliability of freight moving through the ports, but we're always available to provide technical assistance to ports and port stakeholders. So if you have any technical assistance, like this webinar is reaching a little bit, basically we're trying to work with ports and serve as a clearinghouse for information and help people get things done that they need to. We have a group of gateways around the country, or we have 10 regions that we work through. Each of them have a geographic area, and these are called gateway directors. And traditionally, our ports work directly with them, and then we support those gateway directors. But some of the big objectives that we have, especially recently, is looking at reducing congestion and emissions near ports. Talk about that environmental impact and the neighboring community impacts. We're seeing a lot of drive towards electrification and low carbon technologies. We're trying to be more efficient, resilient, and sustainable, and basically support the supply chains. These are just a summary. You're, I'm sure, familiar with the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed in November. It's also referred to as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA. That grant, or that legislation, new law, includes a lot of discretionary grant programs that are summarized over the next couple of slides. But I'm going to talk about some of these, but I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of some of the significant things that are happening because of that historic law. You'll see there's the continuation of the RAISE grants. There's a new bridge investment program. The Marine Highway Program was given a kind of a shot in the arm. The Port Infrastructure Development Grant Program, INFRA Grants. There's a grant for pipelines modernization. There's a mega projects grant program. Those projects that are over $100 million. This is a new program. it continued the Chrissy loan, the Chrissy program, rail grants, and then there's a new truck emissions for port projects. The primary programs, or the primary things that we work with here at the Maritime Administration, are these four. And so I'm going to give you a little bit more detail about these programs. But those other grant programs, you should pretty much expect to see a notice of funding opportunity or those solicitations coming out between now and summer. But all of these are really designed to keep the economy moving and move things along. But these are the four primary programs that we work with. The first one I wanted to talk about is the Marine Highway Program. In the 2007 Clean Energy Act, the marine highway routes were established to alleviate landside congestion. In that program, freight was initially defined as freight loaded with wheeled technology or containerized cargo. And then subsequent to that legislation was added to basically including the efforts that generate public benefits that promote short sea shipping. It added unitized cargoes, palletized cargoes, and freight vehicles, including commuter passenger ferries, if there's freight on those ferries. So this is just kind of a high-level summary of the Marine Highway Program, America's Marine Highway Program, and basically the Marine Highway System includes the navigable waterways of the United States. This is a map representing those that have been designated. There are basically, we say the majority of the rivers, the navigable rivers and waterways, including coastal waterways, are included in this system. There's a few things. You can see the western slope of Alaska. There's a couple other rivers up in the Pittsburgh area that are maybe not done yet. The Marine Highway Program, it includes 3 different steps. It's for domestic shipping, and it is the first criteria for a grant is that it has to be on a designated marine highway route. That was the slide before that showed all the different routes. Those are designated by the Secretary of Transportation, and to be eligible for this grant program, all services have to be on those routes. The second phase is a process known as the route designation or a project designation process. It's also a process where the service providers propose a service and show its viability in comparison to other modes, and they basically give a business case to the secretary and ask for a designation of that service. It's called a Marine Highway Project at that stage, but those services are reviewed. We work with the sponsors, and then that makes them eligible to apply for grants. The last phase is this awarding of Marine Highway grants. Only those designated Marine Highway projects are eligible to apply for these Marine Highway grants. We have a very limited number. I think there's 54 designated Marine Highway projects that are eligible to apply for our grants, which makes this program kind of unique in that we are able to fund close to 70 to 75% of the projects that are submitted as grants for the grant applicants are successful in this program. So compared to other grant programs, discretionary grant programs, once you've been through those other those pre-qualifying steps, there's a little competition for those monies. The one thing about what kind of projects are authorized or available, these are the types of projects that we funded in the past. You can see it's primary focus. One of those focuses is on marine highway, or excuse me, is on marine handling equipment. You'll see a little bit of in-water activities. We don't do the navigation channels, but there may be some dockside dredging. We have done some vessels purchase, lease, or construction, and then planning grants. That's not to say marketing grants; those have to be vetted in the marine highway project designation process. But if there's an associated engineering study or something like that related to the needs of that service, those planning grants can also. So this kind of gives you a breakdown of how we've distributed funds in the past, and just kind of outlines what we do. Because it's kind of a smaller grant program, we haven't done a lot of infrastructure improvements, and we focused on this landside equipment. This is just kind of a representative of the types of projects that we funded. Gives you kind of the scale, the average sizes, or kind of you can kind of see what those programs look like. But this grant program in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA, it received an additional $25 million to go along with any annual appropriations, and we should be having that notice of funding opportunity released here in the next few weeks. Maybe as early as this week it will be released. And the total program has awarded just over $50 million to date since 2010. So this, it's a significant bump in dollars available for this grant program. The INFRA grant program was continued in the bipartisan infrastructure law. I don't have any information about the notice of funding opportunity because it hasn't been released yet, but you can look at previous notices of funding opportunity and see the general characteristics. That most of these statutory requirements are continued, but there's going to be different emphasis in the notices. But this program over the next 5 years has been funded at $8 billion. That's a significant jump from the 2021 notice of funding opportunity. But this is a multimodal discretionary grant program that's administered by the department. It covers anything from highways, bridge, rail, etc. And ports are eligible recipients for this grant program. Traditionally or historically, ports have competed fairly well in this grant program. We've received approximately 8 to 12%, depending on the year, of the total funds available. But you just look for this award to be, or this notice of funding opportunity to be in the National Register, in the Federal Register soon. This program is for regional and national significant projects. So it's basically for those programs that are between $25 million and $100 million is the maximum dollar amount. We do have one ongoing notice of funding opportunity that is for the RAISE grant program. This is for the local and regional impact. So that other one was capped or minimum size of 25 million. This is that next that tier below, up to $25 million. But this program received $7.5 billion over the next 5 years in the IIJA. And the current NOFO calls for 1.5 billion. It's split evenly between the urban and rural areas. Ports again are eligible for this kind of assistance, and they've again received usually close to that 10% of those total funds have been used for port projects in the past. This is just kind of talks to you a bit about the eligible applicants and the types of projects that are available. But generally speaking, when you're looking at the port infrastructure, you're talking about those things that facilitate the movement of freight in and out of the port. It could include things inside the gate or outside the gate. Traditionally, it's kind of like the same with the Marine Highway Program. It's not for channels, but it can do some harbor maintenance or dredging associated with a project. It could be that you're doing some docks, could be doing some rail, could be doing road improvements into and out of the port, etc. But at least 5% of the funding, or $75 million, is in this grant program is going to be for planning or preparation or design of projects. Also, at least 1% of the available funding, or 15 million, will be for projects designated for historically disadvantaged communities or areas of poverty. There was a series of webinars that were given that were between February 9th and the 16th. Those were all recorded and are available on our website that are really good information about this particular notice of funding opportunity and the ability, how best to compete for these grants. But the topics for those was how to compete for the grants. If you're a tribe or a rural applicant, what kind of considerations should you have, etc. The Port Infrastructure Development Grant Program is one that's managed actually by the Maritime Administration. We first received money for this program in 2019, and over the last couple of years, it's been about $200 to $250 million per year. The bipartisan infrastructure law authorized $2.25 billion over the next 5 years, or basically $450 million per year, and it can fund up to 80% of the projects, just like the other applicant or other grant programs. But the minimum award size is 1 million, maximum of 57.5 million. The notice of funding opportunity, I know that there was a Federal Register note or a grants.gov. We had a statutory deadline to get that out within so many days of the passage of the law. I know that they did technically complete that, but the notice that's out there currently basically says that additional information is forthcoming. And I think they expect to have the final notice published before the end of this month. So look for that $450 million first year of that bipartisan infrastructure law. That notice will be published very shortly. I'm going to talk a little bit about other resources, specifically these financing programs. I've got Kirk on the call. He's our port finance agent, and he's going to talk through those first two bullets. We also have private activity bonds and a conveyance program. I don't think I have any slides on either of those, but basically for the private activity bonds, it's a method of raising funds for projects with low interest payments, and basically creating a bonding opportunity for ports. We have a program where we work with the General Services Administration, who basically they're kind of the federal government's landlord for federal properties. And some agencies are surplusing properties that could have a port use. And so we work with them, or we scan the excess federal properties, and occasionally we find a match where a port can receive without cost these federal lands for port purposes. And then the Advanced Transportation and Congestion Management Technologies Deployment Program, it's a fun acronym, ATC-MTD. It's been a little under $60 million per year that is across the modes, can be used for piloting technologies that reduce congestion. And we've had a few ports compete for that as well. But I'll turn it over to Kirk now for talk a little bit about the Build America Bureau and this grant, or the finance programs.
Okay, thank you. I'll just touch briefly on the Build America Bureau and a couple of their primary loan programs. The Build America Bureau is a group within the U.S. Department of Transportation. I think maybe the best way to think about it is it's a an infrastructure bank that provides loans essentially for infrastructure projects across all modes, including ports and the like. The loan programs can be used in tandem with some of the grant programs that Travis had mentioned or discussed. It depends on just eligibilities in each notice of funding opportunity, or the loan programs can be used just separately aside from any of the grant programs. So just something to keep in mind as your stakeholders are thinking about their plans of funding and finance, and how to make the best use of these programs and resources. Next slide, please. So the first of two of their, what I'll call their primary loan programs, is the TIFIA loan program. You see it there on the slide, Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act. This has been around since 1998 or 99, I believe. And there's been some good traction as of late, getting these loans more so into the maritime space. The TIFIA loan program essentially is long-term, low-cost financing. Borrowers can get the rates that the U.S. government borrows in the Treasury market on their loans. And typically, this loan program will finance up to 33% of eligible project costs for any given project. And there are some other nuances where you could possibly get longer-term funding or finance up to a greater percentage, but it is more specific to certain projects. Benefits of this program: you draw funds as needed, as opposed to having the whole loan drawn all at once up front. You can defer repayment 5 years after substantial project completion, and you can see there on the slide, typically anyway, a maximum term of 35 years past substantial construction completion. And again, ports are eligible for this loan program. Next slide. And the second of the loan programs from the Build America Bureau at USDOT is the RIF program, Railroad Rehabilitation and Improvement Financing Loan Program. It's similar to TIFIA, although obviously, as the name suggests, it's more specific to rail infrastructure projects. Again, long-term, low-cost, flexible financing. This program can finance up to 100% of eligible project costs versus the typical 33% with TIFIA. So something to keep in mind if you all have stakeholders looking for creative ways or alternative ways to fund the rail projects at a port. And there are certain mechanisms whereby the credit risk premium is a loan loss mechanism that is at least currently borne by the borrower of the loan. Again, the RIF loan program is eligible for port projects. And I just want to reemphasize again, before I turn over to Travis, these programs can be used as standalone for infrastructure plans of finance, or depending on grant requirements and eligibilities, it can be used alongside the USDOT grant program. So just something to keep in mind as your stakeholders think about how to fund their capital improvement projects. With that, I think that's it, and I'll turn it back to Travis.
Very good. Thank you, Kirk. I was talking about those discretionary grant programs that the ports can apply for, and that are primarily administered either through U.S. Department of Transportation, with some touching by the Maritime Administration, or they're actually administered. There's a number of other grant programs that are available that are from other sources. One of the newer ones is the National Highway Freight Program that was established in the FAST Act. And basically, these are additional funds for states to use for the movement of freight in their states. They have to do it through a state freight plan. They have to designate these projects, and up to 30% of the funding that the states receive can be used for eligible ports or for port projects within the gates. So we like to talk about this program just to make sure that the states or the ports are aware of this opportunity. Just a, some typical uses. It could be some truck lanes. It could be just a variety of things that move freight in and out of the state. But ports are eligible for those. Some of the states are doing. Anyway, we are. It's a multimodal review process. So every state freight plan it's administered through the Federal Highway Administration, but the Federal Highway Administration then works with the other modes, including ourselves, and we review them for content and make suggestions and things like that. But there are opportunities for ports to participate. The new requirements, the bipartisan infrastructure law, mandates some changes, including an inventory of states of intermodal or port terminals within a state. It includes new mandatory requirements for freight advisory committees. They used to be an optional thing, but it provides some guidance on how those freight advisory committees should be administered, et cetera. So that's just a program that we like to highlight when we're out and about, just to make sure that ports know that they should be working with their state DOTs and working to be a voice. We had about 6 or 7 states that actually included National Highway Freight Program dollars for port purposes over the last few years. Another change that's significant that just wanted to draw attention to, and you'll see some of these requirements show up in the notices of funding opportunity. You can look at the upcoming PIDP grant and the RAISE grant, but basically there's a couple of executive orders that are looking to create more equity in the federal grant process, and they would like to see 40% of the overall benefits of certain grant programs go to disadvantaged communities, and so. Every notice of funding opportunity that comes out, it may have the same grant program name, but you should always very carefully review the notice of funding opportunity criteria and make sure you address each of those things. But you'll see a bigger emphasis on making sure that the benefits of the project support or go to disadvantaged communities. There was a series of webinars and things like that were held just as they were designing the program, and you'll, like I said, you'll see some of those things in the notice of funding opportunity. In the bipartisan infrastructure law, again, outside of the U.S. Department of Transportation, a lot of money was or will be utilized on the maritime transportation system. You can see the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers got a significant amount of money along with Coast Guard. The Federal Highway Administration will be administering this truck emissions at ports. It's a $50 million per year program for electrification of ports or of port trucks. And then I believe FTA was the one who received the money for the ferry boat terminal construction program. So a couple other just kind of some highlights of the law. This is a program administered. It's a federal highway program that's its most flexible program that is allocated to the states. But in this case, up to 15% of those programs of those dollars can be used for barge landings or docks and waterfront infrastructure projects. So that's a new eligibility that states have for their STPG grant funds. Just wanted to highlight that. Also with the National Highway Freight Program, I had a couple of slide sets from the state freight plans. It used to be capped at 10%, but now up to 30% of those funds can be used for intermodal projects. It could be rail, it could be port. So we're just highlighting those. There's also a new grant program that will be administered here at the department, but it's for mega projects. So we had the INFRA and RAISE that were, the one was up to 25 million, the other one's from 25 to 100 million. This is a new grant program for mega projects that are those projects that are basically 100 to 500 million, and then those projects that are over 500. So the federal government is trying to make sure that the nation's supply chain needs are met, and not all its supply chain, but just the transportation needs. And this is a new grant program over the next 5 years. Again, there's this is really not a new program, but the RAISE grant program, which I talked about, that's the notice of funding opportunity that's out now. It was a program that was that was allocated resources through the Congress at their whim, I guess, and they basically codified that. So now you'll see that grant program moving forward. It has more, I guess, more stature in the federal government, in that it's now a codified program. So that's good news. Just as a place to find these grant opportunities, there are hundreds of pages. This is a handbook that the Committee on the Maritime Transportation System, they're a coordinating body or agency here at the federal government. They're housed at the Maritime Administration, but they're a standalone group. They have created a federal funding handbook that references all the different funding opportunities. And like I said, I think it's hundreds of pages that you can look and see, if your port or your project could be funded. It's just a resource. We developed with the American Association of Port Authorities a port planning investment toolkit, and it includes 3 different modules. Well, there's 3 initial modules where the planning, feasibility, and financing, where it basically takes a project sponsor step by step through the process of creating a project and how to get it, make sure that it's feasible, and then get it financed. It talks about the grant programs and financing options, etc. We also have an intelligent transportation system module, and then a marine highway program module. So this tool was designed to help ports obtain funding. We had about 30 ports that participated in the different modules to kind of give us feedback and help us to make sure that it had a lot of utility. And it includes some case studies or some examples of how people develop their own projects. So that's available on our website. It's also through this link that we're continually looking to update that. Another place where you can find information about our grant programs, I like to refer people to this, but a couple of years ago, there was a concern that rural areas were having trouble competing for the discretionary grant programs. And so they set up a special website or a suite of tools to help rural areas compete for these grants. But to me, it makes it very simple. And so I kind of refer urban or rural people to this website, but it includes just some tools for people to use when they're looking to fund a project. And it includes reference to our port planning investment toolkit. There's a active funding opportunities link. There's a fact sheet for the different programs, funding matrices, and just a variety of tools that are kind of a one-stop shop. And so I encourage people to use that as a resource when they're trying to navigate all the different opportunities. This is kind of a summary slide that we've created that includes links to the major grant programs and or financing options that people are interested in for ports. And this just basically takes you to a landing page for each of these programs so you can find more information. Another thing that we're trying to do here at the Maritime Administration, we have a lot of research that we do. We work with different partners trying to find solutions or remedies. We've done some programs over the last few years looking at the impacts of planned lock closures, the impacts of the tug and barge industry, working with different groups. But one of the projects we're working on currently is a asset management tool. We recognize that if you're looking at federal highway or rail, that there's a lot of requirements for asset owners to keep things in a state of good repair, to keep them inspected, to keep them operating and safe. In the maritime industry, especially for waterfront assets, that kind of reporting requirement doesn't exist. And we've found that a lot of ports are operating basically a run to failure. There's a lot of things that are not necessarily where you'd want them to be if you're running an asset. So we decided to work with industry and to try to develop a tool that can be used to assist with assist ports in their asset management. And so you'll see that this tool that we're developing, it has three major modules. One of them is an asset registry, where an owner can include it, kind of inventory of all their assets. There's a risk register that talks about the risks that those assets may be subject to, and then a decision-making tool that would allow the port to quantify and prioritize the capital investments that we wanted to do. So this is kind of the overall what we're striving for. It's difficult to read, I'm sure, on your screens, but it's a good illustration of the various decision-making metrics being incorporated into the tool. This bar chart is an example of multi-objective decision-making, looking at 20 different projects. Every stacked bar represents the value of a capital project. Basically, the taller the bar, the more valuable the project is. When you look at this chart, it's an example of a revenue-centric metric, which is basically how a lot of decision-making is done, that focuses more on the revenue growth. And that's where the value is calculated solely on the basis of what, the project increases the benefits. It could be a benefit cost ratio, net present value, or return on investment calculations. And it's really a powerful tool because it talks about winners and losers, but we're going to show you what our tool will add a little bit of information. So in this one, you can see the revenue growth as a primary criteria. So that we're adding the state of good repair, or in this chart, it shows the magnitude of the value of the state of good repair and how it contributes to the value of the revenue growth. But then if you add to the state of good repair and the financial benefits, you can see adding risk and demonstrating the challenge or the complexity of projects, and that it's not always about the new revenue, but also you want to incorporate, what are the values to the port. Anyway, this tool, we hope to have it finalized here in the next couple of weeks. It'll be open source, and we hope to have a follow-up contract to basically program this and then host it on our websites. Ports would be able to come in, use it, retrieve information, they could basically use it as a decision-making tool that they could then take to the boardroom and show some of the benefits outside of those revenues. And hopefully we think it'll be a tool that will be utilized. There will be an opportunity for ports to, at least this is expected, that they would be able to share their data anonymized with us. And that would help us to calculate some of the overall or quantify some of the needs of the country as far as the keeping things in a state of good repair and et cetera. But in 2019, the PIDP grant program recipients were required in that notice of funding opportunity to either declare that they had an asset management tool or that they would be willing to use this tool during the reporting period of the grant. We're trying to emphasize the need to harden the infrastructure to keep in a state of good repair, basically keep the nation's supply chain resilient. And so this is a tool that we hope will aid in that. It'll help ports to have those discussions and better quantify the decisions that they're trying to make. So anyway, like I said, we hope to have the model developed soon, and then hopefully we'll be able to program that in the next phase and get it out. This is some contact information. We're just going to open it up for questions, but afterwards, if you wanted to reach out to us, Bill Pappy is our associate administrator. He runs the Ports and Waterways program. Yvette Fields is the Deepwater Port licensing. I didn't talk about that, but that port conveyance program is run through her shop, where the excess federal lands are conveyed to ports. And then the various other actors here are working with the different grant programs. Tracy does some of the assistance for post-award, some training and compliance things. And anyway, with that, I'll turn it back over to Sean for questions.
Thanks a lot, Travis and Kirk. That was really informative. We already do have one question in the chat from Eric Stromberg. So you can either enter your questions in the chat or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you if you wanted to ask them out loud. So I'll give you just a second, Eric, to let me know if you want to ask out loud.
You want me to articulate the question that I just wrote in the chat?
Yeah, I mean,
Sean?
just to have the conversation.
Sure. Hey, Travis, thanks so much. Really appreciate you guys weighing in for our committee, and it looks like we have pretty good participation. My question was the role of the implementation, development of the asset management tool by a facility owner, and to what extent that will influence MARAD's decision in terms of allocating the grant to that. In other words, if you have an asset management program that meets the requirements of the tool or comports with the requirements of the tool, will that be used as a criterion in MARAD's decision-making as to who gets the grant?
I haven't seen that discussed yet. I know that there, like I said, it was used as a criteria or as a, I don't know if it's more of a checkbox in the 2019 notice of funding opportunity, but since that time, it has not been discussed as a criteria for the discretionary grant program. So I can't say that it will, I can't say that it won't, but my guess is that it will probably not be. Yeah, I'm just gonna, I'll speculate that way, but we do think it's a very useful tool. And I think, especially if we can get it to start formulating need nationwide, it'll gain a lot of utility for us as well. And maybe that would drive some use of it, but no plans that are present.
Well, if I could follow up, Sean, just quickly, Travis, I've been pushing this string for 15, I've lost count, how many years and we're seeing great progress. I would venture a guess that to the extent that the Maritime Administration can place asset management as one of the criteria used in grant allocation. And I think that makes sense from a federal policy perspective. You're trying to assure that your dollars go as far as they can to meet the needs of the owner. That would be wonderful. So I would propose on behalf of our asset management task committee at ASE COPRI that be considered. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I think you're right. I think there is a lot of value there. There was a lot of I don't know, noise is the right word, but buzz maybe when the 2019 NOFO did come out And like I said, there is a general feeling, and especially in notices of funding opportunity, to see more resiliency, to see state of good repair included in the eligible projects. And so we'll keep that in mind. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So there aren't currently any other questions in the chat or anyone else with their hands raised. I'd really love to give the attendees another opportunity to ask any questions. So if you do have any questions for Travis or Kirk, please feel free to let us know.
It's really a historic time, this IIJA. I think that overall they said there's some $17 billion available for ports. That is a generational event. I think for the next 5 years, we're going to see more investment than ever by the federal government. And of course, the private sector has probably done more over a period of time, but this is really important time for us. When I first started in 2015 working for the Maritime Administration, we were basically instructing people how to find other people's money. And now we have money that the department is using and investing, and it is significant. We've seen a number of ports apply over the last few years for grants, and those numbers continue to go up. And our job is to help you be successful, to help grants be the best. When discretionary grant programs are awarded at the end of the notice of funding opportunity cycle, any unsuccessful applicants can ask for a debriefing, and we really encourage that if you're involved in those processes. They're not to criticize, they're basically to help applicants reapply. And so there's a lot of good feedback in those opportunities. You may have to wait a little bit because about half the applicants take advantage of that, and they have to schedule, as you can imagine, how all those meetings. But really, there's a lot of positive feedback about how to strengthen applications, and we strongly encourage you to do that if you're unsuccessful the first time or a second time, or sometimes third, hopefully not. But there's a lot of competition. I think for most of the grant programs, for every dollar applied for, there's, for every dollar available, there's $10 to $20 applied for. So that's one of the disadvantages. These programs are underfunded, but at these historic levels, we think that we'll see higher success rates and more investment for sure.
That's really great. We appreciate the briefing and the update. And this briefing has been recorded, and you'll be able to find it at the link that I'm posting now is COPRI's events page. And you can find all of our current and past events there. And we'll get this briefing posted there. And you can always look for more of these really informative webinars. If there aren't any questions, I just want to give you one more opportunity to share anything else you had. And thank the Asset Management Task Committee, Eric Stromberg, Patty Gaynor, for getting this together and helping us share this information with the community.
Thank you. We appreciate the invitation.
All right, thank you very much. And everybody have a great day. Thanks for joining us.